right, it's a pleasure to welcome in Zaileen Janmohamed, the president and CEO of the Bay Area Host Committee. Zaileen, how are you?
I'm doing great. We're getting closer to some events next year. I'm excited.
Yeah, very excited for this conversation. And I think, we touched on this in our intro, but all of a sudden there's a flurry of events, major events happening around the Bay Area. And you're not partially, you are responsible for helping this be possible and happen here around the Bay Area. So let's start with the basics. What is the Bay Area Host Committee and what are the committee's main objectives?
Yeah, it's such a good question because people don't know who we are and actually don't understand how events come into the Bay. And so the Bay Area Host Committee is a 501c6 not-for-profit organization. It essentially serves the purpose of bringing major sporting events into the region, and as a result, providing significant economic and societal impact back into the Bay. I would say it's like a lot of sports commissions in and around the United States. And so many of our cities that we all visit and travel to, they have sports commissions, right? And we in the Bay have not had a sustainable sports commission ever. And I've lived here since 2006. I actually didn't know that until I took this job. And I think it's something that this region was missing, because these bid processes are very competitive and there's a lot of learnings as you take reps in how to bid, which we'll talk about, I think, a little bit today, that a sustainable sports commission is actually is needed and hopefully will continue even beyond the events that we know of next year.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask you about the mechanics of the committee and how you go about the bidding process. But first, let's just start with you personally. How did you work your way into this role? How did this get onto your radar? And what career experience do you need to become the president and CEO of the Bay Area Host Commission?
Yeah, I want to tell you, Kerry, this wasn't planned. I don't think if you had asked me when I first started in this industry 20 years ago or so that I would have told you this is exactly what I'd be doing. So let's just start there. There was not this huge game plan and I knew exactly how it would play out. I have worked in sport for a long time. I got a graduate degree in sport management and an MBA at the University of Massachusetts. And that program kind of gave me the keys to the rest of my life, to my career. My first job was at Major League Soccer. I was in New York for a couple of years. Really young, learning, and in a time when the league was very young. It was only 10 years old at that time. And so the great part of getting that experience so young in my career is when you're within a startup, and I'm kind of in that place today, you are learning a lot. You're getting a breadth of experience across a lot of different functions, and you're learning what you're good at, and you're learning about what you like to do. And eventually, hopefully, in most people's careers, those two things start to merge. You find out what you're good at and you find out what you love, and those two things end up being the same thing. I definitely learned how business worked. When you're in sport and you're only thinking about sport all the time, it's great and a lot of fun. But you potentially are not learning exactly how a for-profit business works. What are the decisions that need to be made that are not really sport specific? Finances, budgets, your P&Ls, what does an ROI look like, all of that. And I had a sponsorship strategy role. And so I was really in kind of this analysis type function, which are all the tools and skills that I learned today. Fast forward, I left Visa, went to LA 28, was there for a long time. I think we'll talk about that. And then this job, I've lived in the Bay for, since 2006, so almost 20 years now, but always worked in jobs that required me to be in places outside of the Bay. Worked in major sporting events. And my board of directors, which are the presidents of all the Bay Area sports teams, it's a very small circle here in the Bay Area. They're very good salespeople. And they said, Z, why are you working on events outside of the Bay? You live here, your kids are here. And they did a very good job, Kerry, of convincing me to come in and essentially start this organization. I was employee number one. We're now at 20 people and, have a few events in front of us. So.
Yeah, speaking of a few events in front of you, you've got the Super Bowl coming up in February. You've got the World Cup next year. I think a lot of sports fans do understand why it's important for these events to take place in the Bay Area. But to someone who says, why is this so critical for the region? What can this do for the region to have marquee and major sporting events come here? Why is this something that you care deeply about? And why is this something that can help everyone around the Bay Area?
For me, there are very few things in life that bring people together, no matter what your background is, what age you are, how you grew up. There are very few things that are unifying, and sport is one of those things. Like, you can sit in a stadium and not know most people around you, but if they're wearing the same jersey, and maybe even if they're not, you are cheering with them, right? I high five people at games that I do not know, but you're hugging and doing all the things. Music is another one of those things that just tends to bring people together. And so the most essential point for me in bringing sporting events together is this unifying quality that it has, and the fact that it just makes people feel good. Whether you go to the game or not, the fact that you see people in your neighborhoods and in your communities, you see them having a good time, you see your community flourishing, those are things that I think just make you happier. And so that's the most basic part for me, Carrie. I think there's other things that happen, right? We've had a downturn, which we're coming out of, which has been awesome to see, but it was a rough few years here in the Bay. And, you know, unlike maybe what happened in Super Bowl 50, where the Bay was really thriving at that point in time, we needed these events now to help continue to accelerate and propel the region forward. And you'll see that in some of the economic impact reports we've had, right? We've done a pre-event economic impact report showing a $1.4 billion positive economic impact to the region just because of the events that will happen next year, including the NBA All-Star Game that's already happened. You get a societal impact because you have more things to do. There's more ways for you to spend time with your family. There's more cultural experiences. And so, outside of just the happiness quotient at the beginning, there's tangible impact that you will see because of the events that come here. And that's important. And that's, to be honest, like the only thing we care about as a not-for-profit. Like, I actually, I need to manage my expense profile, and we need to raise enough dollars to make sure the events are successful here. But I'm not here to make money. I'm here for that part right there, which is the economic impact back to the region.
One of the things that really interests me about this job is, like, everyone wants a Super Bowl. Every city should be bidding, should be competing for these things. How far out do you actually have to start preparing the bid? And who are you catering this bid to? Like, who's in the room and making these decisions when you're pitching the Bay Area as the destination?
Yeah, the processes for bids, and this is not just for the Super Bowl. This is for even an Olympic or Paralympic Games. It's getting there for the World Cup as well. These bid processes are starting to change. I think, what maybe you and I were used to, a few years ago or a decade ago, is like it was a very heavily contested bid process and elongate. People would like fly to multiple cities, flying to wherever the presentations were. But it was an expensive process. And I think a lot of the governing bodies, and when I say that, I mean like the NFL and the NBA, started to realize that it was a big expense, and sometimes an unneeded expense. And, there are, not all cities are able to host an event like the Super Bowl because of the infrastructure requirements that you need in order to host. And so the process has become much more efficient, I would say, shorter, with less cities that are kind of making the final rounds. The process for the Super Bowl began in late 2022. I actually hadn't been hired yet. That's when like the early analysis by the NFL of like which cities could be in the mix, based on the ability, from an infrastructure perspective, and the fact that there was a FIFA World Cup in 2026, like what cities could actually rise to that occasion and do both theoretically. And so then when I was hired in 2023, we were already kind of considered one of the finalists to bid. And essentially it was about 10 to 12 weeks of work of just you are trying to write out documents that show that you have the infrastructure requirements, et cetera. You go through a number of meetings, and then your final meeting is a presentation to all NFL owners. Where I was in the yeah, it was a little intimidating. That's an intimidating process. Um, and you walk into a room, and there's 32 tables with each ownership group at each table, and you're presenting why you think the Bay or whatever city you're presenting on is the right city or region to host. And so it's a 10-minute presentation. It's not long. It's 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, you basically are trying to quantify and qualify why you guys are the best. And the vote happens almost immediately. You leave the room, they vote, and then they call you back if you win, and then reality sets in, right? So if you think about that, that was in May of 2023. We are in November of 26. So we got 3 years ish out of planning and bidding and just getting it all ready to put on.
It's incredibly cool and a great behind the scenes look at the process. The fact that all 32 NFL teams are represented with owners there, I think a lot of people are interested in that type of thing. And the work that you do, 10 to 12 weeks of hardcore preparation for 10 minutes, it's amazing to me. And I wonder, how does this differ when you're, going after the Super Bowl or going after the World Cup to other events that are really important to the region, like getting the Laver Cup to San Francisco or getting the NBA All-Star Game to San Francisco? Do you use the same information? Is it basically just the same pitch that you've perfected through the years now?
Well, I'll start by saying I'm still learning, right? So I think and I hope that the pitch gets stronger as I get better and as we get more reps in us of how to put these things on together as a region. I think that when we put a bid together, it's multiple parties coming together to put a bid, right? So I don't know all of the information about every single hotel room in San Francisco. I work with SF Travel to do that, right? So, I don't know the venues and capacities and all of the ins and outs of load in and load out of all the venues in the Bay. I have to work with all the venues in the Bay to learn that. So it is I get to compile all that information and kind of serve it back out to make it seem really compelling. But I need a lot of inputs from people all around the Bay to make sure that it's actually real and accurate, and I have the right information. I think the way we work in the Bay, this is a really interesting region, right? Because we have 9 counties here. All of them do business a little bit differently. And all of their venues work a little bit differently. And so the agreement that I have with my board is essentially like, if you can host an event in your venue, Laver Cup is a really good example, where the venue, where it's kind of specific to that venue, the expense profile of the event is something you can sustain as a venue on your own, you should go and bid. If we can support you at the Bay Area Host Committee in that bid, we will. If you need marketing, amplification support, et cetera, like we will make sure you have everything you need. But if you're a venue that can do that on your own, you want to host a Taylor Swift concert, you want to, however, and venues have been doing this a lot, very successfully on their own without the Bay Area Host Committee, and they should continue. Like, the last thing I think that we want to do is get in the way of already a very successful process. If, however, we want to host an event that requires multiple counties or cities, that crosses kind of geographical boundaries, or requires a pretty significant revenue raise because the expense profile is such that you need more dollars, then the Bay Area Host Committee can step up and support in that manner. And so that's why you'll see us maybe more involved in things like the NBA All-Star Game and Super Bowl 60 and the FIFA World Cup, and less involved, supportive, but less involved in things like the Laver Cup. Just because we want to make sure we get all of them, and we have to almost divide and conquer to be able to get all of the events.
You touched on this at the very beginning, and we've seen different iterations of the Bay Area Host Committee and landing events through the years. And obviously, someone who was heavily involved in the past was current San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie. He was chairman of the board of directors of the Bay Area Host Committee. What kind of a role does he have today in helping you secure these events? Obviously, he's someone who is prominent on social media in trying to revitalize the city, and he's always at all these events. How involved is he in maybe the conversations that you have about getting these events to the Bay Area and to San Francisco more specifically?
Did you see the smile on my face when you asked me this question?
I did.
It does help to have the mayor of your city be, number one, a huge sports fan, huge. And number two, be a person that's been in your shoes before, because he understands the process of what it takes to put one of these things on. When I talked about walking into that owners meeting for that presentation, the mayor had to do that for Super Bowl 60, that or 50. That was his job. And so, one of the last calls I had before I went in and to do that presentation was with Mayor Lurie. Now, he wasn't mayor at that time, but it was, he was giving me the, hey, here's your pep talk as you walk in. Here's what it's going to be like. And so I share that experience with you only to say, like, when you have someone that's the current mayor of your city that's been through it before, it's so helpful, because again, like, you have that rep and experience behind you. And now that person, basically is the visible person that represents your city. That's helpful. I think today, he's obviously very busy. And that's why, he's not able to chair our board anymore, that and a variety of other reasons. But he's still as supportive as he was when he was the chair of our board. And so, we're going to have a number of things happen in the city of San Francisco, for Super Bowl for sure, and also for the FIFA World Cup. And those are conversations I have with the mayor and his team on a weekly basis. There are things that he does just in terms of giving us guidance of, hey, I know you need to do this event. You should think about these 3 locations. Or, hey, let me get my team going on this place where there might be a roadblock for you, because we want to make sure you're making decisions more effectively. So it runs the gamut on the support. And some of the support is very tactical or almost transactional of what we need. I need a permit. Okay, let me see on my team on, like, how do we actually make that happen for you? And some of it is just, emotional, the humanity that comes from someone who's done it before, and he just happens to be the mayor now. And I actually value both equally, because it's a grind. Like, this is hard, and you need some of that support as you kind of continue to churn forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that really interests me about this whole process is all of the stakeholders that you've got involved, combining people across different regions, but also the different venues that you work with. I mean, you've got Levi Stadium, you've got Chase Center, you've got places all around the Bay Area, and you have worked in a wide variety of positions over the last few decades in sports. I wonder, like, is there something that you're excited about trying out at these venues? Are there new innovations that are coming during these events and, Super Bowl, in World Cup, that you think, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for a Bay Area venue or the Bay Area itself to kind of show off and lead the world into a new place in the sports world?
Yeah, I think I'm going to answer this question in a few different ways. First of all, when you have a board that represents every team and therefore every venue, that's a really awesome place to start, right? A lot of my peers don't have that as a starting point. I do. I'm very lucky that, number one, we have such state-of-the-art venues to choose from. It's the reason we win, right? It's the reason we win these bids. One of the reasons anyways is because you have world-class sporting venues to use for major events, because multiple venues have to be used. And then when you have the team presidents that are like, you can use it, I'm going to be able to show you, the best paths of travel to get it. They have just so much information and expertise around it. It makes it even better. We don't win these bids without those venues. I think the things that I'm excited to showcase, there's a couple of different things. I think the Super Bowl this next year in 2026, the footprint around Super Bowls has evolved since Super Bowl 50. And the experience for guests that come to a Super Bowl, including brand activations, et cetera, is much more enhanced, bigger than what we saw in Super Bowl 50. So how Santa Clara and Levi Stadium kind of address the bigness of the event right now, I'm excited to kind of see, because we haven't done that before. The same exists for the World Cup. We are going to get a fan base here for teams that are going to be very avid fans. Soccer fans are great. They're crazy. They have tons of passion for their team. And so how you build that, ingress, this kind of thing that we call last mile, and what that experience looks like at the stadium. We again haven't done before, and those will be new uses of adjacent parts of the stadium that we are thinking through what the best path of travel looks like. How does it become very turnkey, et cetera? So that's kind of an interesting one that we're working on. I would say that it's the non-traditional venues that I'm also excited about. So we announced with the commissioner in September the first ever Super Bowl Innovation Summit. First time that it's ever happened. We had a conversation that was, me and the commissioner, and I was like, Commissioner, with all due respect, you cannot come into the Bay and not talk about innovation in some way, shape, or form. And of course, they agreed, super collaborative. And we're going to do that at the SF MoMA, which is probably not a venue that you think about when you think about a Super Bowl coming into your market. But it just showcases how different and diverse the Bay is. Because for me, innovation is not necessarily just tech. Tech is a big part of it. But we innovate in a lot of different places besides and beyond tech. And I need to show that's a venue that I want to show off on purpose to be able to tell that story. So there's a few things that I think we're going to see that I hope are a little bit different. And what I want fans and people who are paying attention to do is kind of look up and be like, that was a little bit interesting, right? I want to propel that type of thinking.
Yeah, I for one am very interested in seeing how flag football inside Moscone Center works because
Yes.
I grew up going to car shows there.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to happen, but I will be there. I will be there.
It's I forgot about Pro Bowl for again another first, right, to combine Pro Bowl into the week of Super Bowl. They also told me when they first told me, Kerry, that they're going to put flag football in Moscone. I did exactly what I told you I want other people to do. I was like, okay. Let's see how that actually plays out. So, I think we are the type of region where we don't mind going first and testing. It's literally who we are as a region. And so some of that is me pushing the NFL and saying, and others to say, hey, let's try this for the first time. Some of it is the NFL really embracing that attitude and being like, hey, we're going to do something different. And I'm like, I'm all for it. Let's try it.
With the World Cup coming to the Bay Area, Zaileen, are there any things that you're doing to activate the local community to make people around the Bay Area care a little bit more about soccer? Because obviously they're the longtime soccer fans, but there's also people from all around the world who are going to be coming in, who are going to be filling the seats. How do you get the local people involved in this?
The World Cup is one of those things that I think is the best type of event to get everybody involved because it attracts so many different types of people through the sport and food and culture and music and all of those things. So the first place we'll do that, Kerry, is the World Cup draw is coming up on December 5th. Apparently, this is a very exciting event. I guess I've heard that more people watch the World Cup draw than a Super Bowl. That's what I've heard. So it's pretty crazy. We will have a World Cup draw party. Our main one will be at Thrive City in San Francisco on December 5th at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's when the World Cup draw starts on that day. We will have adjacent watch parties as well. So one in Oakland at the Oakland Roots, brought to you by the Oakland Roots, and then one in San Jose as well. And so there's going to be a place for fans to go if you're so interested to come and join us and really find out which teams are in the groups and ultimately which teams will start to come into the Bay for the World Cup.
Two quick ones for you as we wrap things up here. Obviously, the Bay Area Host Committee has had different versions. We've talked about that, but it became a full-time institution in 2022. You were its first employee at the very beginning. Do you envision this committee hanging around past the World Cup and past the Super Bowl in 2026? Is there a long-term future for this Bay Area Host Committee?
That's the intent. I think when the board put this together, that was their intent, that we were going to build a sustainable sports commission. I think the region needs one. I think we have to figure this out. We'll have a little bit of a quiet period, a needed quiet period after the World Cup, and to understand how and what things we will bid for in the future. That will be a factor in how we sustain ourselves as an organization. What does the organizational structure look like to be able to kind of navigate the ebbs and flows of an event schedule? And then we need a sustainable revenue model, right? When you start an org and you have 3 events standing right in front of you, you're going to raise the dollars required for those events. You're not necessarily thinking about a sustainable revenue model. For us to sustain, we need to manage an operating structure, right? So those are the things that we're working through with the board right now. But the intent is that we exist even beyond the World Cup.
And then the last one for you is, are there events that you could see you bidding for in the future? Are there marquee events that have not been on the calendar yet in the Bay Area that you want to go after and target?
I mean, the first thing that people always ask me about is when are we bidding for an Olympic or Paralympic
Yep,
Games? And they
exactly.
usually do that like right in a very busy part of my day. And I'm like, ooh, not right now. I mean, that would be a dream. I have a lot, my whole background is in the Olympic and Paralympic movement. That would be a dream come true. I'm not saying that we're doing it. I'm just saying that it's one of the things that get asked about a lot. I think the thing about the Bay that's really awesome is the events that you can bring here don't have to be traditional sporting events. And so, we just submitted a bid for the World Cup of Rugby. That's a few years from now. There's a huge cricket following population here that I want to really explore to see how we do. There's bike racing. Like there's some things that I think the Bay does and involves itself in really well that I want to that are almost untraditional that I want to see if we can start to bid for.
I'm excited to see the future and all the events that come. Zaileen, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Good to be here. And thank you for having me.